The darkness that settled over Fairmont Crest did not come from nightfall, but from a silent fracture one, in which walls that once seemed impenetrable began to whisper of betrayal, control, and the horrific prices of love gone wrong. Before everything shattered, there were small signs that went ignored, glances that slipped away, silences that stretched a beat too long, and a vague, suffocating sense that someone was being pushed toward the edge without even realizing it. Inside that airless space, Dani's tragedy began to rise, not like a sudden explosion, but like a slow crack spreading wider and wider, deep enough to swallow everything she had ever believed was solid. Dani hit rock bottom in the cruelest way, as every layer of self-respect she had spent years building collapsed at once, exposing someone raw, panicked, and haunted by the terror of abandonment. Her pain stopped being a private emotion and became a state of existence, seeping into every thought, every action, every wrong decision that followed. She didn't just lose love, she lost the very sense of self that had once allowed her to stand steady in a world ruled by power and calculation. In that desperation, Dani began interrogating herself, not to find answers, but to avoid the truth, that perhaps she had helped create this ending through blind choices. Through the times, she twisted other people's feelings in order to hold on to something that had been cracked for far longer than she wanted to admit. The moment Andre left was not merely a breakup, it was a clean, cold cut that tore through the last illusion Dani clung to in order to survive. His silence was more brutal than any accusation, because it forced her to face the possibility that he had seen something she had tried to hide, a truth large enough to make him turn away for good. Andre walked out exhausted, carrying a rage that had been compressed for too long and a sense of betrayal he had never fully confessed, not even to himself. He convinced himself that leaving was the only way to preserve whatever humanity he had left. Yet deep inside he knew he hadn't truly escaped, because every step forward dragged a chain of consequences he wasn't ready to confront. Dani's collapse spread quickly like a poisonous whisper through a community trained to hide cracks behind perfect smiles, and it didn't take long to reach Bill. It wasn't a tragedy deserving sympathy. It was a signal. The instant he realized Dani had lost her last support, something both satisfying and dangerous stirred inside him, as if the power order he had once lost was quietly returning. He didn't see Dani as a person in pain, but as a void that could be filled with control, with vague promises and invisible strings tightened more ruthlessly than any public bond ever could. The past between Bill and Dani had never truly been asleep. It had only been waiting for the right moment to wake, fueled by wounded pride and anger that had never been released. Bill began weighing each move with familiar cold precision, telling himself he was simply repairing what had once been destroyed when in truth he was rebuilding a balance that served him most. Dani, cornered and unraveling, began to understand that Bill's attention was both a lifeline and a double-edged blade, but her fear of being left behind made her willing to close her eyes to every warning sign. The more isolated Dani became, the more reckless she grew, making choices she would once have considered unthinkable. Her fury at Andre fused with her resentment toward herself, transforming into chaotic energy that pushed her forward, regardless of consequence. She told herself that if she could not be loved the way she needed, then at the very least she would seize control of her own story, even if the price was losing the last remnants of who she used to be. Meanwhile, Andre began to feel the aftershock of his decision to leave, as pieces he had dismissed started locking into place, stirring the suspicion that the truth might be far more complicated than what he had chosen to believe. Bill, standing at the center of that spiral, was no longer merely manipulating the situation, he was being consumed by his own ambition, because every advance demanded a greater cruelty than the one before. He could no longer clearly separate the desire to protect from the urge to possess, and that very confusion pushed everything beyond any safe boundary. Dani became the focal point of a dangerous game, in which she was both a pawn and a player, and every choice narrowed her escape route until there was almost nowhere left to run. A silent storm began to form, buried secrets surfaced in fragments, pulling irreversible loss in their wake. Andre faced the possibility that leaving had not freed him from responsibility, but only postponed an even more brutal confrontation. Bill realized the control he craved might become the very thing that imprisoned him, and Dani, standing amid the rubble of relationships that had once defined her, was forced to choose between collapsing completely or being reborn into something more dangerous, more reckless, and with nothing left to lose. In a world where love, power, and fear are woven together with no exit, this downfall could be the end or the first tremor of an even greater disaster waiting to erupt.